Let me be clear up front. I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I didn't cry when he won. I didn't write fan fiction about moving to Canada. I voted for the man 3 times. And that's exactly why I get to sit here, look you dead in the eye, and say, what the hell is going on? Because somewhere between the rallies and the promises and the electric momentum of the 2024 campaign, the podcasts, the UFC crowds, the sense that something was genuinely shifting in this country, we were sold something, a specific something. No new wars, lower costs, America first, for real this time, release the Epstein files, and a big, beautiful coalition of people who were done with business as usual. Well, it's 2026. Let's check the receipts. This video is not about hating Trump. It's about holding him to his own words. If that makes you uncomfortable, welcome. That's what accountability feels like. Let's go.
We will keep America out of foolish, stupid, ridiculous foreign war.
I'll tell you, you're not going to have a war with me, and you're not going to have a third world war with me. That I can tell you. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
The single most consistent promise of the 2024 campaign was this: we are not going back to the forever wars. Trump said it at every rally. He said it on every podcast. He made fun of the neocons, called the Iraq War a disaster, and positioned himself as the anti-war populist, the guy who would end conflicts, not start them. Democrats spent 8 years bombing 7 countries under Obama and called it humanitarian intervention. Trump said he was different. That was the whole pitch. And then, on February 28, 2026, he launched a full military strike on Iran, Operation Epic Fury, because of course that's what they named it, Operation Epic Fury. Since taking office, Trump has authorized military strikes in 8 different countries. 8. 3 of which had never been directly targeted by U.S. forces before. In 2025 alone, he approved more individual airstrikes than Biden did in 4 years. Just let that sink in. The guy running against endless war started more wars. And Iran? Iran is not a small operation. The U.S. and Israel bombed 3 of Iran's major nuclear sites in June 2025: Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Then, after a brief pause and some failed diplomacy, struck again in February 2026. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. Oil prices blew past $4 a gallon nationally, and if you're in Los Angeles, nearly $6 a gallon. Though to be fair to Trump, Gavin Newsom has spent years layering California's gas tax so high that residents pay $1 or more above the national average before a single bomb drops anywhere. So that one's a bipartisan achievement. Congratulations to everyone involved. Energy dominance, baby. Now here's where it gets embarrassing. The administration can't even agree on what the goals of this war are. Secretary Hegseth gives one list. Rubio gives a different list. The White House gives yet another list. Trump himself says the war is basically won, then threatens to bomb Iran's power plants the next day, then says a peace deal is imminent, then bombs Isfahan again. His own defense secretary said it was up to Trump whether this is the beginning, the middle, or the end. That's not a war strategy. That's a guy spinning a wheel. And Iran? They say they're prepared for at least 6 months of conflict. Their foreign minister flatly denied that any negotiations are happening, even while the White House was claiming talks were going great. 7 American troops have died. About 140 more have been wounded. Gulf states are getting hit with drone strikes. Spain, a NATO ally, closed its airspace to U.S. planes involved in the war. This is what no new wars looks like, apparently. Oh, you thought we were going to skip this one? No, we are not skipping this. And yes, I know the mainstream media spent years either ignoring Epstein or burying the story whenever it got too close to powerful Democrats. That's real. The corporate press absolutely ran cover. But here's the thing. Trump made releasing the truth his whole brand. He made it a campaign promise, so now he owns it. The Epstein files were supposed to be the moment. The swamp would be drained. The powerful would be held accountable. Trump himself promised it. His team hyped it. Attorney General Pam Bondi went on Fox News in February 2025 and said, and I'm not making this up, that the client list was sitting on my desk right now to review. Pam Bondi, the woman whose entire job was to be the people's pit bull on this. She went on television, looked America in the eye, and teased the biggest accountability moment in a generation. Then she folded like a lawn chair the second it got inconvenient. And Kash Patel, the guy who spent years on podcasts and in Congress, hyping himself as the deep state's worst nightmare, the guy whose whole brand was built on promising to expose the corruption, took over at the FBI and promptly helped reaffirm that Epstein died by suicide, and there was nothing to see here. The man who was supposed to blow the roof off Washington has been about as threatening as a strongly worded tweet. If this is what the deep state's worst nightmare looks like, the deep state slept great. So, what did they actually release? White binders at a made-for-TV event with right-wing influencers, containing mostly documents that were already public. The MAGA base who'd been demanding this for years looked at what they were given and said, "This is old news. This is nothing." Then in May 2025, Bondi briefed Trump that his name appeared in the Epstein files, and almost immediately, almost on cue, the walking back began. The DOJ released a memo saying there was no incriminating client list, no evidence of blackmail. Trump, who had been hammering Epstein for years, suddenly couldn't believe reporters were still asking about it. Congress had to force the issue. The Epstein Files Transparency Act passed 427-1 in the House and unanimously in the Senate. But the DOJ missed the legal deadline, violated the law, released hundreds of pages completely blacked out. A poll found 55% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of this. Senator Cynthia Lummis viewed the unredacted files and said on record, "Now I see what the big deal is." Tucker Carlson raised concerns about an intel agency cover-up. Elon Musk claimed the files weren't being released because Trump's name was in them. The timeline is simple. Hyped the files, got briefed, Trump was in them. Bondi went quiet. Patel went quiet. The binders came out. The deadline got missed. The law got violated. I don't know what's in the unredacted files, but I know what was promised, and I know what was delivered. And Bondi and Patel, two of the most hyped appointments of the entire administration, have been a disappointment on the one issue their whole careers were supposedly building toward. Oh, and as of today, Trump fired Pam Bondi. Apparently even he got tired of waiting for her to do something. She spent a year teasing accountability, botched the Epstein rollout so badly that Trump's own chief of staff said she had completely whiffed, and got shown the door without so much as a named job to go to. The woman who chanted, "Lock her up," at the 2016 RNC couldn't lock up anybody, couldn't even hold on to her own job. Poetic, really.
And I'm also making it a lot easier to buy a thing called a house, the American dream. Understand it, there's so much talk about, we're going to drive housing prices down. I don't want to drive housing prices down. I want to drive housing prices up.
Let's talk about housing, because the 2024 coalition included a lot of young people who were absolutely sick of not being able to afford to live. Gen Z, young men especially, people who were renting forever, watching home prices go up and up and up, who saw Trump as someone who would actually fix it. And Trump did talk about housing. His team promised tax breaks for home buyers, opening up federal land, cutting regulations, making monthly payments manageable. Then, on January 29, 2026, in front of his entire cabinet, Trump said this: "I don't want to drive housing prices down. I want to drive housing prices up for people that own their homes, and they can be assured that's what's going to happen." He also said, and please understand this is a direct quote from the President of the United States, "We're not going to destroy the value of their home so that somebody that didn't work very hard can buy a home." So there it is. If you're a young person who hasn't bought a home yet, Trump just told you, to your face, that you didn't work very hard. Meanwhile, the boomers who bought their houses in 1987 for the price of a used Honda and have been sitting on the equity ever since? Protected. God forbid the paper value of their 3-bedroom ranch in Ohio ticks down 2% so their kid can actually afford to move out. Home prices have risen nearly 55% since 2020, a stretch that includes Biden's inflation surge, Democratic-run cities refusing to build anything, and zoning laws so absurd you need a permit to sneeze near a parking lot. Single-family home construction permits are down almost 10% over the past year under Trump. The administration's solution, having Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac buy $200 billion in mortgage bonds, brought rates down a fraction of a point. Morgan Stanley called the effect modest at best. Trump isn't building more housing. He's explicitly opposed to it, because existing homeowners, boomers who vote reliably, who own multiple properties, who have had 40 years of appreciation and still want more, are a more important constituency than the generation that actually showed up for him in 2024 and can't afford a down payment. The people who built nothing, sold nothing, just watched their zip code appreciate. Their wealth must be protected at all costs. The people working 2 jobs and still can't afford rent? Work harder, kid. Chuck Schumer called it giving the middle finger to our youngest generation. That's a Schumer line, so take it with a grain of salt. This is the same guy whose party spent years blocking housing construction in blue cities while blaming the free market. But even a broken clock, the policy is real, the quote is real, and the math doesn't lie. Here's the thing about the 2024 coalition that made everyone sit up. It wasn't just the usual Republican base. It was historic. Trump won around 45% of voters under 30. He hit 40% support among Latino voters, a modern high for the GOP. He doubled his support among black men compared to 2020. He had Make America Healthy Again people who'd voted Democrat for years. He had tech bros who'd never cared about politics. He had former RFK supporters, wrestlers, podcasters, gamers. Meanwhile, Democrats were busy telling Latino voters they had internalized white supremacy and telling black men they weren't really black if they didn't vote the right way. So yeah, the door was wide open. Political analysts called it a realignment, the beginning of a new GOP coalition, one that could change American politics for a generation. 14 months later, that coalition is actively falling apart. A February Reuters/Ipsos poll found Trump's approval among men aged 18 to 29 fell from 43% to 33% in a single year. He won 46% of that group in the election. A survey found that 25% of young men who voted for Trump in 2024 say they wouldn't do it again. Among men under 45, Trump's net approval rating is now negative 19 points. That's a swing of more than 30 points in a year. Latino and black voters who came out for him in 2024, driven primarily by economic frustration, are pulling back rapidly. Analysts say the movement toward Trump was never a durable rightward shift on values. It was a specific bet that he'd actually fix their finances. He hasn't, and they're noticing. Then there's Elon Musk, the tech bro king, the guy who spent $250 million to get Trump elected and launched Doge as the crown jewel of government efficiency. By June 2025, Musk was publicly calling Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill a disgusting abomination, begging Republicans to kill it. Trump said he was disappointed in Musk. said he'd won Pennsylvania without him, and that Musk should maybe go back where he came from. They've since partially patched things up, but Musk is now reportedly exploring launching an entirely new political party. That's what a healthy alliance looks like, apparently. And the Make America Healthy Again movement, RFK Jr. is technically still HHS secretary, but the friction between Make America Healthy Again world and traditional MAGA world is real and documented. His own former running mate Nicole Shanahan publicly said someone other than Trump appears to be controlling his decisions. Make America Healthy Again people are upset that food dyes are being addressed, while bigger issues like mRNA vaccines and glyphosate remain untouched. The coalition of outsiders is discovering that being inside is harder than it looked. The historic coalition, the one that looked like the future of American politics, is already fracturing over broken promises, rising costs, a war nobody wanted, and a president who seems more interested in protecting the existing homeowners than building something new. And while we're at it, let's talk about the other half of this failure. Because Trump doesn't operate in a vacuum. Republicans control the House. Republicans control the Senate. They have the trifecta. And what have they done with it? Mostly held press conferences about doing things, issued strongly worded statements, appeared on Fox News to explain why they couldn't quite get around to doing the thing they promised. It's a special kind of uselessness, the kind that comes dressed in a suit and a flag pin, and still manages to accomplish absolutely nothing. Here's the one that should make your blood boil: the SAVE Act, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. All it does is require proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. That's it. Not controversial in any sane country. Poll after poll shows the overwhelming majority of Americans support it. You'd think this would be the easiest win in the world for a Republican-controlled Congress riding into power on an America First wave. They couldn't pass it. A bill that most of the country wants, with a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican president ready to sign it. And they still found a way to fumble it. Some Republicans quietly killed it in committee. Others hid behind procedural excuses. A handful worried it might upset donors or suburban moderates or some consultant's spreadsheet. The swamp doesn't just live on the Democrat side of the aisle. It's bipartisan real estate. This is the pattern. On immigration, on spending, on the Epstein files, on reining in the administrative state, Republican leadership in Congress has been either missing in action or actively working against the people who sent them there. They cheer at the rallies, they repost the clips, and then they go back to Washington and do what Washington has always done: protect the machine. You want to know why nothing changes? Because a president can only do so much without a Congress that actually fights. And the Republicans in Congress, with a few notable exceptions, have been about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Look, I'm not here to tell you to go vote Democrat. I'm not here to tell you that the other side had all the answers. They demonstrably didn't. The same party that gave us open borders, 40-year high inflation, and a president who could barely finish a sentence is not exactly standing by ready to save the republic. I know that. You know that. I'm here because I believed specific things were going to happen. No new wars, lower costs, government accountability, a Congress that would actually fight, a coalition of people who were genuinely serious about change. What we got was a war in Iran with no plan, no exit strategy, and no clear objective, except maybe to not look weak. We got a president who said to our faces that he doesn't want young people to be able to afford homes. We got Epstein files that were hyped for years and delivered almost nothing, with Bondi and Patel, the two people most loudly promising accountability, quietly sidestepping the whole thing once it got uncomfortable. We got a Congress that can't pass a basic voter integrity bill that the country actually wants, and we got a historic coalition that's splintering in real time. And I think, if we're being honest with ourselves, we have to at least ask the question, because when you look at all of it together, the war the neocons wanted, the files that implicate the powerful staying buried, a Congress that keeps the donor class comfortable, and an administrative state that absorbed every attempt to shrink it. Maybe the people who are always running things just kept running things. Maybe the swamp won. Maybe the deep state won. Maybe the neocons who Trump spent years mocking just waited him out, got back in the room, and ran the same play they always run. Maybe the machine is just too big, too old, and too deeply wired into both parties for one election, or even two, to fix it. I don't know if that's true. I hope it isn't. But I know what was promised, and I know what happened. And those two things deserve to be said out loud by the people who actually voted for change, not because we hate the guy, but because we meant it. Accountability doesn't mean disloyalty. It means you actually believed what you said you believed. It means you hold the people you voted for to the same standard you'd hold anyone else. That's not TDS. That's just being a citizen. If this video resonated with you, share it. Not to own anyone, not to score points. Share it because the people around you deserve honest conversations about what's actually happening. I'll see you in the next one.